I grew up on a steady diet of science fiction movies, television, comic books, and of course, video games. So this next interview was a real thrill for me. Throughout the process of filming Unlocked, we heard from many industry veterans, game designers, and experts. But with gaming being such an influential part of global pop culture, I wanted to talk to the man himself.
Jeremy.
Hello, Mr. Shatner. How are you?
So well, thank you for calling. The tenor of our interview would be you educating me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we feel like that'll really strike the right tone because we're still talking about video games, but people are learning via William Shatner.
As you discovered, it is an education about the technology, so I'm very interested in that.
Thank you, Mr. Shatner. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, great. And my camera is which one? Which is the closer one?
Main one, your close-up is this
okay,
one here.
Good.
Yeah.
Where are you framed?
From here.
Beautiful, thank you.
So, first of all, thanks for taking time to talk to us. So right out of the gate, do you have any memories of playing the game Pong in the 70s?
You know, it's exactly right. That's where my experience of playing games resides. I never progressed beyond Pong, where the thing ate little things, and everybody was amused, and it was such a nice little amusing thing for children. Who knew? Who could have anticipated where games have come? So the point is, I am totally an ignoramus about games and the sophistication of games and how games work and the international effect of games. I know nothing really except what I've read and what people have told me, but I've never played them. I understand their complexity, but from the simplicity of what was to what is now, in my mind, is a small part of what games are going to be.
Sure.
The future of games, which now is my area of expertise because it's only speculation, I'm as expert as you are.
And in talking about the future of games, when we talk with a lot of game developers, 9 out of 10 developers reference some version of the holodeck when it comes to the future of games, the future of virtual reality. Do you see that connection there?
See, I've never talked to anybody about the future of games. You and I are conversing about games, for me, for the first time. So yes, speculation on 3D and all that. But if I were to ask, and which you are, asking me what do I think about the future of games, I think the future of games can be summed up into what the Madden game forecast about the Super Bowl this year.
Yes.
The Madden game, for those people who don't know, forecast the exact score, and except for the incident of the interception, forecast everything.
Yeah.
The future of games, so by extension, the future of games is going to forecast everything. We're going to be able to play games involving everything, whether it's politics, war. We had a Star Trek episode in which war was fought with computers, essentially games.
Simulation, yeah.
A simulation, so nobody understood that blood and guts were going to flow, that there would be blood on the floor and bones sticking out. The horror of war was eliminated by playing a game. And the guy who lost the game lost territory, or was only when lives were lost, when the absolute grotesquerie of war was shown with a blown out skull, did people react with horror. Otherwise it was a game. Sure. So the problem and the challenge of games of the future would have to be the simulation, like the Madden game, and the ability to raise the emotions of whether you felt whatever political thing you were being asked to vote on, and the complexity of political things. Do we go to war here? But look what happens if you go to war. And there's all this. The problems that the President of the United States has to think about in making a decision, that could be a game. That is a game.
Sure.
That's a political game. It exists in some form now. But what happens if everybody in the United States has a game and votes on a procedure?
Well, and it's interesting because the definition of a game or a video game has transitioned so much now that they're referred to as apps or simulations, or there's all these different words for what essentially is a game.
But the game is removed from emotion. To engage the gamer, you need to have that emotion. What that entails, I don't know. Does that entail, to follow the previous example of do we go to war or do we not go to war? You have to now see the horror of war, of what that decision, if you're going to vote to go to war, one of 400 million people voting on a game, you have to be engaged emotionally. So does that mean showing you? When I did a movie about the Nazis and the horror of the Holocaust, the director showed us Holocaust films with bulldozers shoving bodies into graves, and the emaciated skulls of people who were starved, and ashes that were, when they were put in ovens and burned. The horror of what the Nazis had done in the Holocaust. It's one thing to say, well, that was 70 years ago, whatever the time lapse is, but to be shown to be able to smell it, to feel it, that's what we should be doing in the game.
Immersion.
Immersion in the game. So are the Madden games of the future filled with the cries of people around you, so that there's this audience reaction? The reason you go to a film in an audience, with an audience, rather than seeing it at home, is you have this thing that all human beings have. It's a response to the group. And so your laughter is harder when you're laughing at a comedy in a group, and the sorrow is deeper because people are all around you are feeling that it's almost by osmosis that you're absorbing all these things. The experience is heightened with an audience. How do you incorporate that audience experience in a game?
Where it's interactive and immersive.
Exactly. All of that. 3D, but 3D with a total immersion. That's the future of gaming.
Absolutely. And it changes the conversation about game development. And there's all these different genres of games: action, adventure, sports, strategy, role-playing. But that's a genre that doesn't exist right now.
No.
But could.
No, has to. It will evolve to that. If you think of the simple games of Pac-Man coming to the sophistication of the Madden game, who forecast the score, that's got to be like headlines in everybody's mind. The Madden game told you the score of the Super Bowl months before, because they programmed not only everybody's ability and matching player for player, but their emotional. The
Coaching
players,
styles, yeah.
coaching style, everything. And there were two fabulous coaches. They were playing a chess game. They were matching. If I send out a pass here, does my corner, who's protecting? I'll bring my, and they're playing a chess game, those two masters. Yeah. They're playing the game, and all of the rest of us are filling in for that master plan. Yeah. So knowing that, the future of games is profound. It may be the way the rest of our lives, like whatever, not so far ahead. I'm not talking a generation. We may be talking 10 years from now, where everything
Total
is
game changer.
It's a game changer, exactly. That everything we do I want to order Chinese food or do I want Mediterranean? Let me see. Let's play a game here to see what we've got. How do you feel? And you're talking to your party. But the 5 people are coming to dinner. Let's play a game and see who votes for what we want to have for dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, It could go as small as that to global warming, and what do we do about it?
And talking about different genres, take a left turn here. Do you consider Chateauetry, the app that you kind of helped develop with your voice, is that a game?
Well, there you are. That's an interesting question. I never quite thought it through until this moment. You've got my voice on Chateauetry challenging you to send a message in a variety of ways. You have the ability to choose me sending it in a neutral way and then 2 increases in bombast, say. But then, since you can change each word to how you want it read, you have far more complexity. It's only beginning. Chateauetry is only the beginning on how every blink of the eye, every nonverbal tell gives you insight into the person you're talking to, what they really mean. So a form of Chateauetry could be sent to subtly tell people what you really mean. Sure. If you balance on the word love or less or more or ideology, whatever those operative words are, and the words that condition that verb.
And that's the player's choice.
And that's the player's choice. So now you're sending a very subtle message with the choice of how you want that message read. It could have tremendous complexity.
I think it's absolutely a game. So I see that you're very passionate about horses, and that's a pastime for you. Do you see the connection between gaming being a pastime for people and why a hardcore gamer would be so passionate about a particular game or people that he or she are playing the game with? Do you see the connection of those two? Your passion for horses, a gamer's passion for the game or the gamer community?
I'm capable of doing both. And again, I love talking to people who stimulate you so that even though the camera's recording me, I'm forced to think about what I'm doing a little more deeply than I would just sitting around working. So yes, what do the horses mean to me? The horses are both a game because I'm a competitive rider and I ride in competitions and I want to win. So I spend my time practicing and practicing and practicing. I put in my 10,000 hours on horses to try and have a reasonable expectation of I can win this competition on these brilliant horses because I've got a brilliant trainer, and I've put in my time to be competent in riding these horses. But it's also therapeutic. I go out to ride the horses and I'm communicating with the horse, and I don't have to be riding fast or anything like that. I can be at a walk and move the horse over and talk to my horse and gentle him and commune with the horse. I'm having a spiritual experience as well. So I'm out competing in a sort of game. I'm also having an emotional experience. But there are people I know who will go into their bedroom and won't emerge for 12 hours because they're playing a game and they're emotionally into the game, and we think of that as being addicted.
Sure. And there are people that are game addicts. That's a reality.
So how different is it to have a game addict who, the horror stories we know about people who've lost their lives playing a game, to people who have become obsessive about horses. And I know people, rich people, who lost their fortune on horses. I know somebody I'm thinking of immediately who was a millionaire, had money to retire, but the ego was such that she felt that she had sufficient knowledge to make choices on running horses, on thoroughbreds, which is not what I do. I'm into competition horses. But she had gone from competition horses to thinking she knew so much about horses, she could make choices on running horses. Blew millions of dollars, became poverty, was put in a home as she got older for destitute because she had lost all her money on thoroughbreds and she was the expert.
hubris and ego and
Hubris and ego and all. Exactly. It's Greek in its tragic fall.
You know, it's interesting because we're talking about, you know, pastimes and hobbies, things that we're passionate about. You know, you with your horses. The gaming community can be passionate about a particular game. Meet up at fan events, conventions, which we talk about in the film is essentially movies, television shows, games. It's all the campfire. You know, it's the modern day campfire. We're sitting around communing with each other. It's not, instead of it being a campfire, it's a movie, it's a television show, it's a game. Do you see that connection there?
Well, you see that, and that's where I was going. Well, as I launched into my epiphany, I also am able to sit in front of a television set, whether it's news, because I'm a newsaholic, or whether it's a movie, and lose myself in the movie and not stir from the couch for 3 or 4 hours while I'm transported into this other world. So I'm both active, and if it's a horse movie, even more so. So I'm both active, and I understand how you can lose yourself in whatever consciousness that is. It's got to be very complex, because you have to have the sense of what it is. I was thinking of a movie I saw last night. It was a Roman fighting. So you have to have the sense of what it is. And I studied combat, sword combat for stage. So you have to have a sense of what the shield is like and the sword, I think. And then you have to have this sense of what it is to leap on a horse with the sword, the thing, and ride the horse bareback and yet see it happen on film and be part of it. So you're there mesmerized, as is the gamer as they sit in their bedroom playing. And they are hearing the voices of their compadres all around the world.
Sure.
So they're locked into another world that isn't their world. And so what's at stake is reality and unreality. Yeah. And of course, what constitutes those? There are philosophies that say we're all looking at unreality anyway.
Right. And whether it's a sword and saddle experience that you're watching on a screen in couch potato mode, or sword and saddle that you're experiencing viscerally, immersively via a controller or a virtual reality.
Exactly.
It's still an experience that the perception is reality to the person that's having it.
You hear the siren. That siren is a call to all our mentalities. The guy driving the ambulance, the guy that's suffering that the ambulance is going to, people getting out of the way and moving their cars over, to us discussing the siren going by. There's a complexity to that siren as there is a complexity to the game moving on all those levels, and we haven't even begun to get to the levels that the Madden game got to.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned the siren, because we're talking about entertainment and immersion and reality, but it's like that's someone's life. That siren is some would say is the ultimate reality, because there's no more gaming, there's no more TV. I'm alive or dead.
Right, and that siren is coming, and suddenly that person doesn't hear the siren anymore. They're dead, or they're dying, or they're having an out-of-body experience. And wouldn't it be incredible, but not beyond the possibility, that when they come to, they say, I had a vision of two people sitting at a desk talking about a siren that was coming to me.
Personally, I don't think that any form of entertainment, movie, television show, a video game, virtual reality, will ever get there in terms of cerebral reality, because there's all these moral and a lot of people talk about virtual reality, like actual tapping into your brain or taking a pill, and there's different opinions on both sides. But again, it's sort of the train coming into the station. If you take someone from the 1920s and it would set them in a theater in 2015, they'd
or
have
3D.
They'd have a stroke and die.
That's right.
They wouldn't.
And that's what I think gaming is going to come to.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And I think it's possible that gaming will take over our lives. And I don't know, or the rebellion of 2050, in which all games are burned and not allowed any longer because there is no life.
Self-aware.
Right. Or there's no, the people don't no longer get on the street or shop or interact. It's all internal.
Which is why I look at, you on these horses and this being a passion of yours. And it's different because I guess it's more primal, because it's an animal. And I think, we were talking about video game addiction earlier, if that, has any validity. And I think there's, of course, a balance to video games as a pastime, as opposed to something outside and something more primal. And now there's these groups for those unfortunate individuals who can't really bring gaming into balance with their lives, and they, there are stories of different gamers, getting scurvy from neglecting themselves. And obviously that's the exception, not the rule. But now there's these groups, Online Gamers Anonymous, where they go, and it's not like a 12-step program. It is a 12-step program. And it's not meant to do away with the game. It's meant to bring it into balance with their lives.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Have you ever known an alcoholic?
I have. Yeah.
Addicted people? It's either they stop whatever they're using. Right. They can't. What's the expression? One swallow is insufficient and 1,000 swallows is not enough. Or whatever the expression is.
All or nothing.
All or nothing. So you have to let go of it. I know a guy who was addicted, gaming addicted, got out of it, became very much part of the world, and has gone back to being addicted.
Oh, man. And I think that's less to do with, and I'm curious your opinion on this, I think that's less to do with the medium and the subject matter, and more to do with, bents and personality traits and
the surroundings, whether it's in their mind or their internal or external circumstances. Absolutely, there is a study sort of shedding some light on that subject, on addiction, and they have found, and it's controversial, that the addiction is part of the circumstances, and that, for example, heroin, a lot of people in hospitals get morphine of one kind or another for pain, and a week later or 2 weeks later, they're discharged from the hospital, and there's no addiction. And they've been given enough whereby they should be addicted if what we think constitutes addiction works. They should be addicted, but they're not. Other people take it once and become addicted. How is that possible?
Right.
So it is, it may not be the body growing dendrites and whatever the physical manifestations are of addiction. It may be the circumstances of the individual. Sure. Yeah, but when you lose yourself in a movie, whether you're at a theater or at home, when you've had that, you can understand where people go when they're into the game.
Sure. And that's switching gears a little bit. You're pretty intimately connected to the, Comic-Con sci-fi crowd, which you may or may not have made this connection. I would be surprised if you hadn't. That the majority of that crowd are gamers of some kind, whether it be tabletop or interactive or mobile. Had you made that connection?
No. What I found in a documentary I made as to, I wrote a book and then I did a documentary based on what are the people doing at the Comic-Con. What are they doing at the convention? Yeah. Who comes to the convention? And ultimately, I resolved it. In the book, I came to the conclusion it was they came to see each other, old friends, and they would, 2-3 times a year, they'd go to a convention and see their old friends. But in the documentary I made, the film documentary I made, I concluded it was mythological, and that they were fulfilling a need, as religion fills the need to explain the inexplicable, so science fiction seeks to explain what we don't know.
It becomes their religion.
It becomes a form of religion, a form of explanation. Oh, that's what UFOs are. Oh, an alien might do that. Oh, a whole civilization, how can we travel faster than the speed of light? Oh, that's how. I think what you've got from me, which is all really I can give you, is speculation on the future. And when I saw the item about the Madden game, I thought that's so germane to what you and I would talk about. Sure. Because you'll have other people knowledgeable about, far more knowledgeable than I, and I can't pretend to know what to do and what to punch up, and I can barely, I Twitter and that's it, and I use that microphone a lot because I can't type and all that.
Speaking of microphones, do you see any fundamental difference in voiceover for a video game and voiceover for a film? You've done a lot of voiceover for video games, Star Trek games.
For both, yeah. You mean as an actor? No. The voice, because I'm recognized and walking around, I avert my eyes so somebody won't look at me and say, oh, is there? So if I walk around like this, I'm under the illusion that people dismiss me more readily than. So I avert eyes a lot. So I walk in the airport. I'm walking around like this. So as a result, over the years, my ears have been attenuated about conversation, about words. I'm listening, I guess, more than like a blind person who's listening to the nuance of words. So as an actor and as somebody who averts his eyes a lot in public, I've become very conscious of the reading of a word. A word will give you an insight into the tone of the voice and the meaning of the word, the way they read hello. Hello portrays exactly how you feel about that person.
Chateauetry.
Yeah. So as an actor reading the words, I'm totally conscious, and that's my attempt at artistry, is to say the words the way I think the character would have said them given that situation. And I never understood why great actors like Marlon Brando and of that ilk who got so tired of acting. Because for me, acting is eternally complex. In the same way, listening to you talk, I'm hearing the magic of the way you're reading words, so I'm listening to you.
Sure.
And I'm hearing the nuances of your, not only your nonverbal way, but your verbal way. And so that's the way as an actor. So reading lines for a game, as it branches out, so you do the yeses and you do the nos.
And the uhs and the ahs and the...
Well, even the uhs and the ahs, but which is a bit embarrassing. But as it branches to say, if you had chosen this path, and then the branch, and I know your audience knows what I mean when I say branching, and then if you chose that path, the readings are different.
Sure.
And it's the same way whether I'm on screen or on stage, or it's what does the character mean by saying hello?
Right. What's interesting too is so you've got, we're real people talking to each other. You can tell that I'm real. I have skin. I can tell that you're a human being with a pulse. But there's this new performance capture. Of course, James Cameron did it to great effect in Avatar, and video games have been doing it for years, and it's gotten better and better. But you've got people like Kevin Spacey doing performance or motion capture for the new Call of Duty game, and even though the fidelity of it is 2K or 4K or whatever, there's still I don't know if you've heard of the uncanny valley that they talk about in games, which is a lot of people say that no matter what the technology of motion capture, performance capture, inputting that into something, that it's not real.
Well, I think you're fooled a lot of times by and I think it went this way, that the artists who drew the games and to the sophistication they have of today, where it's almost real, where the faces are almost real, but certainly the bodies are very real. Those artists are employed in the great movies, Avatar being one, so that what you see as Minions, where Cecil B. DeMille had 10,000 extras, 10,000 extras are drawn. And how those people, and action movies like Spider-Man, where he's rolling in the air and then pops up on the ground, that rolling in the air is drawn, and the popping up on the ground is live, and the amalgamation between live and drawn, the line is unclear.
Yeah, you can't tell.
You can't tell. So that line gets further and further towards the human being. So one of these days, what pops up won't be human either. And in that moment, before you have your critical sense can take place, you got it, and then you're on to the next thing, the magic of editing, and you haven't had time to say that isn't real. And he's done something incredible. And you think, my God, how did they do that? How did that actor learn to tumble like that? Well, he isn't.
Yeah. And do you have any thoughts or feelings on performance capture versus actual acting?
I had my head done with a laser. So they had an exact, I've done both the death mask, which became a mask for Halloween, they tell me. They used my death mask that was done for, I think it was a Star Trek, so that they laid clay and it got every particle, every pore. And then I've had my head examined with a laser like they would do for 3D programming. Sure. So I've had an exact replica of my face. Now, can they make my face do what I would do if I'm reading a word? If we're going back to hello, if I don't know you and I say hello, what do you want? But my hello suggests what is it you want, but I'm not frightened of you yet. Can that face do those subtle things so you, the audience, are looking at me saying, oh, what's he thinking? Sure. If you're looking at me and saying, what's he thinking, then I, as an actor, have gripped you. Can the guy who draws my face do the same thing? I don't know.
It's interesting, talking about motion capture and performance capture. You as a performer, it's now the technology really already is there to where your face, your body could be scanned with such detail that for generations we could have William Shatner in video games and in movies and film. But would you want that? It's sort of a moral decision. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Howard Stern has a machine, I guess it's used elsewhere, whereby the guys can pick up your voice and make you talk in saying words you never said. And he uses it to great comedic. There have been some people he's had on the show got up and left because they were so insulted when they were saying these nasty words. And I thought it is hysterically funny. So they can take an audiobook that I may have read and use consonants and parts of words to make other words.
Sure. All the nuances.
All the nuances.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Going from where everything that we've talked about, motion capture, performance capture, virtual reality, where games have been, where they're going, do you consider games an art form or more technology?
Oh no, that's an art form. Oh my goodness. It was technology when the things ate other little things. But now, holy cats, what an art form. And the beauty of it is it's only started. When games are shoot 'em up games, that's one type of art form. I had a concept for a game that rewarded you for moral behavior. That was the game. It was a shoot 'em up and a mystery. That still exists, doesn't it? The two types of game. Oh, sure. So I had a game that had both, and I still could sell that game, but there was a lot of interest in it. But if you didn't shoot the guy unnecessarily, you received points.
Sure.
So you had moral judgments to make, which resulted in you winning the prize.
It's interesting. There's some games that, you know, role-playing games. You know, the difference in like you know, an action adventure or a sports game and a role-playing game, which is more of what you're describing, is the focus on a role-playing game is you're building your character up as a magician or as a politician or as a whatever the game concept is. And as a player, if you decide to go down the path of light, then, you know, you'll turn into the good guy or an angel. Or you decide to go down the path of darkness, you literally turn into the bad guy or a demon. And the choices that you make in the game literally affect your character's appearance, because it's about the player's choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be an interesting kind of future for games as well.
Yeah. I think it's interesting if you go out, you know, on the street here and found the average soccer mom and said, do you consider yourself a gamer? 9 out of 10 of them would say no, but 9 out of 10 of them have Angry Birds and Candy Crush and all these things on their phone.
Right, right. Oh, that comes automatically. I've been trying to get rid of that. It keeps popping back up.
Are you a mobile gamer? Do you play games on your iPhone?
No, I don't. I'd rather read. No, if you're going to play a game, I mean, my grandchild is always there playing a game. But if an adult's going to play a game, you want to play a game on a screen. You want to have the experience. I don't get that. Yeah. But then you've got to devote yourself to the game. Yeah. I mean, why spend your time for 5 minutes challenging yourself there? Yeah, I don't understand that.
You're my kind of gamer.
No, immerse yourself in the artistry of the game. Yes. And it is an art form. It's progressed to an art form. It was a technological thing. Like, my mind's racing to try and come up with examples. Maybe like cars, where there was the internal combustion engine and rotary motion and wheels taken from the horse, and then you had a wagon, and then they made an internal combustion in the wagon, and people looked at it and steered it like that. Then artists took over and started to make cars in an artistic fashion. The line, the way the motors worked, and now all that technology is in, and a great car is an art form.
Yeah, yeah.
So it seems likely that there is a rule somewhere that something starts as a technological feat, and as human beings begin to play with it, the artists among the human beings, and we're all artists, by the way, to one degree or another. Well, to the same degree, only some people are more conscious of the fact that they're artists. Right. They take this technological thing that somebody thought of, was able to conceive, and turn it into an art form. Yeah. Maybe like, with a spray can and doing spray
graffiti,
art.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the spray can was to blacken something that was white in your home, and suddenly they're making murals, and suddenly the murals are incredible, and they decorate plain cement, and it's beautiful. And that's taking technology to an artistic form.
You mentioned, was it your grandkids or nephews earlier playing the mobile games?
Yeah, grandkids.
Have you done any gaming with family or friends together, where you get together and play a game? Or
no.
Yeah.
Sounds like an idea, though. I mean, you might spend a vacation with your family. I don't know what this is just the basis of an idea, and I'd need you to organize it.
Yeah, which I would.
Yeah, you might want to, instead of going away for a week, like with the family, you spend the time organizing the family into teams and playing games.
Yeah, it happens now to where I think gaming is has the potential to be a very communal experience. So, if we're sitting, me and you playing, Lego Batman or Call of Duty or Lord of the Rings, yes, we're looking at the game and we're focused on it and we're playing, but we're also this, hey, watch what I do here, and then you're helping me, and we're tag teaming this. And that happens over all genres of games. So it's...
Exactly. And it's my belief that a child starting around the age of maybe 2, but certainly around 3, they're capable of saying that's right and that's wrong. So if you play a game where where the game leaves something of value to a person who has nothing, and that's a moral behavior, that infant, that little kid, whatever we call him, of 3, certainly 5, 6, they're already making moral judgments. Tommy hurt me, Tommy didn't hurt me. But around 2, 3, they start understanding that life has a series of choices, and you can choose to fall out of the crib or stay in the crib. That sort of thing. You could play, they could be part of the game as a family. Even a 3-year-old could be part of a game.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's. I mean, what is a game other than choices?
Right.
Exactly.
What should we do here?
Right. Well, this is kind of the King Solomon principle. But do you think this modern generation, that all of the advancements that have been made in film and television and in gaming, we have these amazing experiences that we can have now, CGI, 3D, etc. Do you think that's lost on the current generation? They sort of take it for granted because they've grown up seeing only amazing things, and they take for granted the history of film and the history of the technology of gaming, and all the the little 8-bit games that you could barely distinguish what the characters look like, or black and white film. Do you see that connection there? Is it lost on the current generation?
It doesn't even. It's not even lost on the generation. It's lost on all of us. The miracle of our present day life. We're still getting used to the phones. The kids of 10, 11, the phone is a natural thing. They don't go anywhere without it. A friend of mine adopted a child from Haiti. He's 11 or 12 or something when he was adopted. Off the parking lot tent that those poor, poverty-stricken people have been living in since the earthquake there. So as part of a charitable act that is so extraordinary as far as I'm concerned, my friend adopted a Haitian child and brought them home, and now lives in this rather grand home that my friend has. My friend adopted the child, sent the child to school, clothed, fed, became part of this fantasy world to this child who was born and brought up in a tent city where the latrines were on the street. And if it rained, that was the cleansing. It wasn't too long before that boy said, all my friends have phones. He needed to have a phone. Sure. And he did, because all his friends had phones. But we too lose sight of the magic and the miracle of what we do. We've lost the idea that, you mean electricity comes into every room of every house in practically every room, every house in this country? You mean there's running water? You just turn on a tap? Yeah. That we go and buy a shirt that fits us and keeps us warm? We've lost that bewilderment and wonderment of how the heck did we come to this, and only we achieve it when we see something on television where these poverty-stricken people have nothing, and they're back to with a piece of flint trying to make a fire. A part of our mind should always be so eternally grateful for the way this part, the people who buy games, who can afford to buy a game, they can afford to have running water and electricity. They're saying, they should, part of their mind saying, the magic of this life and the beauty of this life. And as an addendum to that is, how do we help somebody else who hasn't got this? even a small part of help.
Right, right. Well, it's sort of like the vessel mentality. You know, if you get poured into by a mentor or a friend or family, you need to pour out to someone else, or you'll get fat and full of yourself.
And one thing more that I'm taking from what you just suggested there, the games of the future will have electronic clips that will go to parts of our body that will stimulate our body into thinking we're immersed. So there'll be something an electrode in your brain, in your gut, in your eye. Everything will be stimulated by electrical impulse to make you believe that 3D experience is happening.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I'm really frightened of it. I got enough electrical, self-imposed electrical stimuli.
Right. Well, this has been great.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time. And last thing I wanted to do is show you just this. We're talking about the progression of technology. So we started with, you remember this?
Yes.
So this is Atari.
I think I still have one.
the joystick. So we
Right.
started with this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this. We go
absolutely.
to this Nintendo.
Right.
Okay. And then from there we go to this one. You may not have experienced. So this is sort of.
I've got that at home.
So this is where we are
But I
now.
haven't played it.
Yeah.
I've even got the tennis thing, and I haven't got.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been able to do that.
So
either.
do you see? Where do you see this? What do you think the next version of this kind of controller would be?
I did a series. I wrote a series of books, and we made 4 movies, and a season on the air called Tech War, and this was some years ago, and I imagined, and of course, when you come up with an idea, you think it's unique, and then you find 17 people have already thought of it. So I thought this was unique, and at the time, I think it was, because it was several years ago, whereby somebody sat at their computer, but the computer was 3D, and I brought in a ballet dancer, choreographer, and a American Sign Language. And we had a roundtable discussion with the guys who were going to draw up the computer about what signals to give this 3D computer that was all in the air. So the actor was doing this, and then we drew things for him. So he was able to control the whole computer by moving his hands, and we know that moving the eyes can control the computer. So the game of the future has none of those controls. It's all electronic rays, shafts of light are, and when you break it, you're playing the game.
Sure.
You break that one, you move that one, and you'll have signals. You'll do sign language and play the game with sign language. And all those little controls, like a joystick to this, are obsolete. They're obsolete now.
Right. That combined with the sensors you're talking about that will be implanted into us will talk about multiverse. There'll be another version of us somewhere because of all of that.
Well, there is another version of it. What do they say? I think there's 11 universes out there?
Right.
I don't know how they know that, but it's all part of our mystique. It's all part of how little we know. It's all part of everything changes every minute, let alone every few years, where we realize that everything we said 5 years ago is absolutely 180 degrees wrong. Eat all your vegetables, eat carbohydrates, now eat fats, eat meats. And the cardiologists are going crazy because it should be the Mediterranean diet, but it's not, but it's the Atkins diet, which, I mean, you're
Drink
in
coffee,
a flux.
Don't drink coffee, yeah.
Yeah, we mere mortals are in a flux as to what is good and what is bad, and what is real and what is unreal, and what is the future and what is not the future. We don't know, like the camera may explode momentarily.
Right. Do you think that technology and our immersion in it creates that effect, that multiverse effect, that everything changes, or is that just inherent and fundamental to reality?
It's fundamental to reality, and the word reality needs explanation because there is no explanation, and the whole concept of quantum physics has tossed everything into turmoil when we realize that all the laws that we thought were laws, gravity, light, speed of light, everything's in turmoil, and especially what is reality. Nobody knows.
Things we can touch.
Well, yes, but we're touching that desk, but that isn't real. That's vibrating energy. It just happens to be vibrating a little faster, so we think it's real. But one of the cosmic rays have gone through it 10 million times already, and if the space is so wide to that little itty bitty cosmic ray that it hasn't struck anything. There's no trace of it.
It's fascinating to go down this rabbit hole with you about technology and gaming and interactive and reality. So I wish we could talk for another 3 hours, but I know you've got a schedule. So
I got to do some more talking in the next moment.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It's a
Mr.
pleasure,
Shatner.
really.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Not at all.